scientists agree on one point, that the possibility of life elsewhere is not only quite probable, some feel it is there without a doubt. Let us suppose then that these objects are real space vehicles, extraterrestrial in origin, and not an illusion of the mind.
There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.
I'm looking at the wrong camera. I'm already messing everything up. Wow. Welcome, guys, to a very impromptu live stream. This will also be a podcast episode of Somewhere in the Skies. And I am coming to you live from Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. For many of you out there who may know or may not know, I had the amazing opportunity to attend the Shag Harbour UFO Expo here in Nova Scotia. And it was very, I will tell our guest about how that all came to be, because it was a very interesting string of events. But before I do that, I want to say hello to all of you in the chat. We'll be checking that out throughout the show, taking your questions, comments with our special guest as well. But yeah, if you'd like, we have links to all of our support systems here as well. Patreon, Buy Me Coffee. You guys know all that by now. If you want to support the show, you can do it in many different ways. And every penny goes back into making the show bigger and better. So thank you. Thank you to our regulars joining us as well. Hello to Deborah. Susanna, our wonderful moderator, is here as well. But yeah, tonight is going to be, I should say this morning, is going to be very fun. We're just going to talk all things Shag Harbour, all things UFOs. What would you rather do on your morning and with your coffee? So without further ado, I'm going to bring in our very special guest this morning. Here he is.
I'm the cameraman too.
He's our cameraman.
Yeah.
He's, guys, Martin Willis of Podcast UFO is joining us this morning. He was the MC, the host of the Shag Harbour UFO Expo. So I thought it'd be really cool, man, just to talk about our experiences, our different perspectives on how the weekend went, why we're here, what do we make of the Shag Harbour event itself, and just see where the conversation goes. I love doing these sorts of things. So thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. I have to say something. I was also a speaker here. I was slated 2 years ago, and the exact time that I was supposed to be speaking, I was on the operating table having heart surgery.
Really?
Yeah, I had to have a bypass, and so I was scheduled to speak. So it was delayed a whole year. So, but I came out and I spoke the following year, last year, and then was very happy that they invited me back again, because I love it here. It's so beautiful. What a place.
Yeah, we were talking off air. We're literally looking out right now at a harbor, which is so cool. This is the Yarmouth Harbor.
Some say the Yarmouth Harbour here.
The Yarmouth Harbor. I'm terrible at accents. I'm not even going to try. Open heart surgery.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, it was, I mean, I found out just a couple of days before I was supposed to get on the ferry and come up here.
Okay.
And it was kind of a shock, but I'm doing great now.
Okay.
And so it was October 1st was that year. And next year, this event is going to be on the actual holiday anniversary, of Shag Harbour. It's going to be on the 4th and 5th next year. And that's when it happened. It was a Wednesday, October 4th, 1967, when Shag Harbour, the event happened.
Right. Yeah. So, I guess that's a good place to start. We both have UFO podcasts, so we clearly try to keep up with the case histories throughout the years. I don't know about you. I have so much trouble keeping names, dates, times of all these events in my head. I'm lucky if I get within 5 years of an event happening. Roswell, yes. Yeah. Rendlesham, yes. But I always mix up Shag Harbour and the Tehran UFO incident, because one is 67 and one was 76, I believe.
Oh, yeah. That's an easy mix-up. Yeah. I believe you're right. I believe that one was 76, Tehran. But yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah, I don't know why that happens.
Well, the biggest part of here is I was all along since I started looking into this incident, and many other people, most people I would say, were also is the Shelburne UFO incident, which
Right.
actually happened in 1960, and then the Shag Harbour incident, and that the Shelburne was, in this area in 1960, and to me, it seems like more of a fantastic case than the Shag Harbour. But they were joined together all for, as the story went for many years, that people thought they were the same event.
Right. And that's a great jumping off point. So we're obviously here to sort of celebrate the 67 UFO crash in Shag Harbour, which I should mention, I know you were busy, but every year they give you the opportunity to go to the harbor and
Yes.
see exactly where.
Yeah, I did last year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I did it this year and it was amazing.
Is it?
And
Yeah.
what I didn't realize, and we'll circle back to the Shelburne thing because I find that fascinating. What I didn't realize is we were there with Lori, one of the
Lori
prime
Wickens.
witnesses.
Yeah.
So he sort of walks you. I keep looking at this camera.
Yeah.
He sort of walks you through the event as he witnessed it, and it's so cool to get to first of all have a firsthand witness still alive, willing
Sure.
to tell their story. But they also had like a Coast Guard boat vessel.
Isn't it great?
out
They
there.
did that last year, going around in circles.
Yeah.
And it
And
was
kind of
beautiful.
almost recreating the initial efforts to retrieve whatever crashed into the harbor. And what I didn't realize, Martin, is how close the object actually crashed.
Yeah,
Like
to the
I
shore.
always
Yeah.
envisioned it way out in the water.
Right. I mean, some of the documentaries you watch on it kind of show way out into the water. But yeah, it was fairly close.
I want to say, I mean, I'm obviously just an approximate 3, 4, maybe 500, 600 feet from the land.
Yeah.
From the shore. And I'm looking out there and I'm like, could you imagine what would have happened if that object had crashed just, let's say, maybe 600 to 1,000 feet on the land?
Right.
Where
Or
would
did
it
it
be? Right?
purposely go into the water? That's been the question.
That's a very good point.
And I think what's really intriguing about that whole case, if you talk to Laurie Wickens, the firsthand witness, he will say that the word UFO never came into play for a long time with him, especially.
Right.
But there was that government document that did say UFO.
Mhm.
So yeah,
The first, I believe, official Canadian
Yes.
document or retrieval.
any military document that said UFO, I believe, crashed
Really?
UFO.
Oh,
I
man.
believe that's what the story is, but I may have that wrong.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I guess we'll rewind a little bit to the expo itself
Yeah,
before we dig into Shelburne.
sure.
Because, again, that blew my mind too with Chris Stiles, the
Right.
preeminent UFO researcher on Shag Harbour.
Yeah.
But how did the opportunity come about for you personally to be the host of this event?
Oh, well, it was because I spoke the year prior.
Okay.
Last year, and I just had a conversation with them, and I said, well, I really would like to come up there again. And they said, whoa, do you want to MC? I said, hey, why not? I'd
Good.
love to.
I
So
love
yeah.
that.
And I also did the MUFON one in Texas too. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. When was that?
That was in July 12th, I believe it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So that
And
was
very
the one.
hot Texas.
Yeah, very hot at the time.
Yeah.
Was that the symposium where they revealed those pieces?
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
What did you make of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I really don't know what to think about
Good answer.
those, type of things. And until, there's something really, really unusual and it's documented and we have the data, I would feel more comfortable with that, and so I don't really know what to think about those type of things.
Yeah, it's tough.
I want to see the whole craft.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sick of
Reverse
seeing
engineering.
these little tiny
Yeah.
pieces, which
Yeah.
I've dealt with that. I was out at the Roswell crash site with Frank Kimbler, who has dug up all these little pieces from what he believes were from the Roswell crash. We had them tested. I didn't personally come back with any anomalous results on mine, but I know others who have had those pieces tested have. But I'm with you. I
Yeah.
agree. Like I'm so I don't want to say sick of it. Like we'll take what we can get
Yeah.
when it comes to anything
We
out
want
there.
more nuts and bolts
Yeah.
if we can. But it's funny that I met a listener of the show here in Shag Harbour. He flew up from West Virginia, and he's a metal engineer. He's a scientist, a metallurgist, and he said that when he goes to retire, but right now he has access to these great labs. And he said, maybe he can actually do some work, which would be great.
Wow.
Yeah, because there are pieces. There's the Julie Olson, somewhere in the Midwest, I want to say maybe Ohio or Michigan, who had in 1985 had these this UFO come down. A bunch of people saw it, and then it sort of like sparked when it went up, and then there's holes in the ground. They found pieces of metal.
Interesting.
So she still has those, and she tried to ship them off to Sweden, to Klaus Svahn, the researcher of Sweden. I'm sure you know Klaus. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
So they went there, and FedEx, he wasn't home when FedEx came there, and they returned it all the way to the States because he had someone all lined up to work on those. So
I want your thoughts on this. And this happened with the pieces at the Texas Symposium as well, from what the speaker, the MUFON investigator, said. Why are people mailing UFO parts through FedEx? There has to be a better way, in my opinion.
A courier, someone that will carry it.
Right.
It's expensive, but I mean, when you have something, you hear of these stories, over and over again. For instance, the Socorro case with Ray Stanford spotting the rock with metal on it, brings it to NASA, someone he knows, whatever. Oops, the metal is gone.
It disappeared.
And here's your rock back without the metal.
Happened with Frank Kimbler. Some of his pieces went missing. I know the ones that at the Texas Symposium apparently went missing at one point. So I know. Stop, guys. Here's our disclaimer from Podcast UFO and Somewhere in the Skies. Stop mailing UFO debris through the mail. And if you're going to, at least use priority mail, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know what the answer is to that.
So I'll share with you guys my interesting story of why I'm here. Many of you know I'm doing a ghost hunting show here in Nova Scotia. I've been doing it for about 2.5 years now. It's been a blast. It's a world I never saw myself in. But when I saw that the Shag Harbour UFO Expo was happening, I looked at my filming schedule and I'm like, wow, it's only like a week apart. So Paul Kimball, the head of our ghost hunting show, you guys know him also as a UFO researcher. He was so gracious and said, look, Ryan, I think it's really awesome that Shag Harbour is happening very close. Let's bump everything up a week. And that's ultimately when I decided to work on a new top secret project that I'll be sharing with you guys soon. And I just wanted to come to the event as an attendee and film stuff and interview people like Martin and Chris Stiles. And I think it was about a week before the event, I got an email from Chris Stiles saying, we had a speaker, unfortunately, have to drop out. Preston Dennett, you guys know him very well on this show. And could you come speak? So I was not only was I given full access to coming here and filming you guys and being a part of this as an attendee, but now I had become a speaker, which was just so cool. The weekend was amazing. We saw so many awesome speakers. So I guess, yeah.
I'd like to say something about your presentation, a couple of different things. And it's almost like we copied each other in a way. My presentation is very similar to yours, but I have to tell you, yours is better.
Oh gosh.
You did the people you have on there. What I do in my presentation basically is I call it something like Spectacular Unknown UFO Encounters. And I have little video clips very similar to yours presentation and some really great ones. And I thought, wow, we both had kind of the same idea and how we presented, but that was a great, I have to say, I was super impressed. That was really, really well done.
I appreciate that.
And I love hearing those type of stories that you just don't hear every day.
Right.
And the people, the firsthand, witnesses that had these encounters. And how could anyone, look at that type of thing? I mean, I also do this thing, UFOs 101.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
are new to it. And I basically have clips as well, a couple of really convincing clips. And I say convincing because how could you not be convinced after you hear some of those testimonies?
That's what it really comes down to. And I know you're the same. Preston Dennett is the same. I feel like this all happened for a reason. Like I know it's unfortunate Preston couldn't make it, but I did speak to him after they asked me to come, and he gave me his blessing. He said hello to everyone at the Shag Harbour event and beyond. But you're right. The people behind these things, the observers, the witnesses, that's always sort of been my ufology, as I tell people. Not how big was the craft, and, when the time, the date, all that stuff. Like I will leave that to active MUFON field investigators and those like nuts and bolts researchers. For me, I come from a theater background. I know you come from an art and antique background as well. History.
And auctioneer.
And auctioneer. Let's not forget that.
I'm not going to auction.
Okay, I was just going to say, I want to hear your
not gonna do
auctioneer
that.
voice. So I think a lot of the times, let's just say more of the artistic types, maybe, or creative types, tend to veer more towards the witnesses, where maybe you have more analytical or mathematical even people going towards the statistics.
And we
stuff
need
like
everyone.
that. Exactly.
And I love hearing stories. I don't know about you, but you get in a conversation with people out there, the general public, and eventually if you feel comfortable, I have to have this certain type of feeling before I'll actually bring the topic up and say, oh, by the way, I do something a little esoteric, possibly to your thinking. And that's, I do a podcast on UFOs. And I got to say, at least 50% of the time. Now, my cousin did the eye roll, but her husband said, oh my God, that's great. Barney Hill was my mailman in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And he talked about this. But the funny thing is that about 50% of those people say, oh yeah, I had a sighting. And then they'll tell you this really fantastic sighting, like, wow. Sometimes I love the ones that don't make any sense.
Yeah.
Those are just fascinating.
Well, okay, I want your thoughts on this. And I do want to run through some of the other speakers as well.
Sure, yeah.
But
off track a little, yeah.
No, not at all. There's no going off track in ufology, trust me. Yeah. The story so my presentation, I always update it with new witnesses.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same skeleton where it's maybe 5 or 6 stories from my books and all that. But I completely overhauled it this time to come to Shag Harbour.
Wow.
And I think almost every person you saw, minus 2 of them, have not been in my presentation before. And one of my new ones was a guy named Tommy Smith from Fife, Scotland. And
yes.
Did you see that part?
I did, yeah.
So you guys might know from my book, if you don't, this was a case where a guy in Scotland, boy, I should say, he was a young man at the time. Him and his friend were riding their bikes home. They saw this oil slick in the middle of a road that started expanding, like just getting bigger. It started bubbling, like as if it were like a soup coming from the primordial earth or something. I don't know. And all of a sudden, this big bubbling like oil slick started to elevate and ascend into the sky. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I remember when I'll try to be all dramatic with it, and this is what Tommy saw. Next slide. And then I showed the image.
Yeah.
And it's just this huge black blob flying in the middle of the
loved
sky.
it.
Yeah.
I loved it. And, I had a caller last night on my show. I did a show last night, and a caller was talking about these. It looked like dolphins, going, like swimming. He said about 8 to 10 of them, almost like biological UFOs.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of, that sort of reminded me of that story. It's almost like a biological, this oil slick looking thing.
Yeah, that's how he described it. Organic or like alive.
Yeah.
Which is
It's
so interesting.
Morphic.
Yeah. So I agree with you. The more, I think we both mentioned this at some point, the more unique and weird a case is, the more I tend to believe it.
Yeah.
It's not your typical like
disc, like
black
I saw
triangle disc.
Yeah, disc.
Which is not to take away from anyone who's
That's
seen those
right.
things.
But,
We've both seen weird stuff.
Yeah, but when you talk to someone that's, they're just an average Joe out there,
Yeah.
and then bring up this extraordinary story,
Mhm.
like that would be unbelievable but they feel comfortable enough to share it with you because you're telling them, I do a show on UFOs. Well, I saw something really weird.
Yeah.
And then, this one guy, he bought my washing machine out of storage, and he saw my hat. I had a UFO on my hat, and he said, oh, I saw a UFO. I love when they just say it casually, like, oh, I saw a UFO. He's nice, really nice young guy, probably early 30s. And he goes, oh, yeah, I was in Maine. I was in Maine at the time, but he was at the university. And he said, and all of a sudden, he said, out of nowhere, I was walking with my girlfriend, and this huge triangle covering the whole stream, the whole river, he said it had to be 200 feet wide, just glided right in front of us. And we saw lights on it. And it was, dusk, and no sound at all, And as a matter of fact, it seemed like it took the sound out of everything. You hear those stories a lot.
The Oz factor.
Yeah.
I think people have called it. Like,
right.
All your senses kind of either deplete and go away, or they get expanded sometimes, I've heard. Either hearing it's like Daredevil. He's blind, but he's blind, but he can hear incredibly. So hey, if that's a gift that these UFOs are going to give us, I'll take it. 'Cause I can't hear anything anymore.
What?
Crazy. What? What'd you say?
But I mean, just those stories to me. And, I think if anyone listening to the show decided to go out to the public and say, hey, what do you think of UFOs? You'd probably get about 50% of the people out there either had an experience or know someone who did.
Yeah. Well, I love what you did. It was either after one of the talks or at the very beginning where you said, how many people here have seen a UFO?
Yeah.
And I'd say up to 90% of the people raised their hands.
Yeah.
Which was so cool. And then the next question is always
how many people reported it? Yeah.
And maybe 2 people.
Well, there were 5.
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair. Let's give Shag Harbour some credit. 5.
Yeah. But I have to say, I didn't report my UFO.
No,
I never.
either.
It's like, So I understand the reluctancy of that, but I also, in my time in 2007, I thought, oh, I got to call someone. I didn't even realize that there was MUFON. I didn't realize there were places where you could actually, report something.
Yeah. Well, and like I told you and the audience, like I didn't know either how to or where to report things, so I gave it to my English teacher. In a school report. So I mean,
oh wow,
that I guess that's something. That's something.
Yeah.
Let's go through the speakers quick.
Sure.
Yeah. We had, I believe, first it was Chris Rutkowski, Canadian UFO researcher.
Great guy. Yes.
Yeah.
I've always loved his work. He's been at it for such a long time.
Yeah.
And he's an astronomer. And he fell into this by accident, like I think a lot of people do, and just started taking it seriously. He has a great survey, a yearly survey that he does. And I believe, did he say something like 1,000 sightings in Canada last year?
Yeah,
something like
that
that.
number really astounded me. Yeah.
And I just found, I always thought Canada was the 3rd largest landmass, but it's the second largest landmass. But their population, New York is more of a population than Canada.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It makes sense now, having lived in New York for 13 years or something, and being shoulder to shoulder. You just have no privacy whatsoever. But it does afford your UFO sighting numbers to go up, because I think population density has a lot to do with it as well. You hear about all these UFOs happening out in Arizona,
California, but there's high population California. That's kind of makes up for a lot of things.
Yeah,
but nicer weather here. You don't have the blue skies every day like California.
No, you do not. Yeah, we've been blessed, I think, this past
month. Oh
month.
my goodness, it's been amazing.
Yeah,
short t-shirt and short weather here in October
in Shag Harbour. I know. I brought all my winter clothes with me. I'm just sweating everywhere we're going.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Okay, so Chris, amazing guy. Clearly, you need the preeminent Canadian UFO researcher.
Yeah, he takes it very seriously.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm.
Next, I believe was me. So we can skip that. It went great. I had a
No,
great
we
time.
already talked about that. No, it was fantastic.
Thank
Yes.
you. I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Was it Jennifer Stein after you? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, it was. Yeah, Jennifer Stein.
And she did a different type of talk. She did on, ancient, about 12,000 year old rock form, rock sculptures that were really very interesting. And it's always fascinating. That's how it didn't have anything to do with UFOs, but still, it really makes you. And I told her this, right before she went up. Like we don't give people enough credit in ancient times about their intelligence and things like that. We always think we're on the pinnacle of intelligence, which I think, we're going to be, people are going to be looking back saying, boy, those people were kind of dumb back then, but that's kind of the trend. We always think that we didn't have this intelligence and how they did these things. As a kid, someone had I think they called it a drill, but it's not really a drill. It's just this metal rod with like the star-shaped end. And they said, try to split this rock. And, we did weird things as a kid, but anyway, so I had a big ball peen hammer and I bashed on that thing for hours and hours only to make the slightest little dent. And then you have these amazing pieces of stone that are cut perfectly square and fitted. And then these sculptures, with what tools do they have 12,000 years ago?
Yeah.
It's just totally amazing. What they had was a lot of time.
Good point. I was going to say, it does really put things into perspective. I feel like in today's modern society, we're just like, we got to get everything done, get that skyscraper up. Like, time is money, time is money. Whereas back then, they're like, time is time. Yeah.
Like the sun will take over for the fire or whatever on one stone. I don't know. But
it reminds me a lot, they just announced somewhat recently over in the UK that some of the stones from Stonehenge were actually brought over from Scotland. And they're historians and everyone are trying to figure out how could they possibly have done that? Like get these across, like, was it by ocean? Was it by land?
Crazy.
Why being another big
another
important question? Why did you need the stones from Scotland in this whatever Stonehenge represents, which we still don't know what it truly is. So I think you're right, and I've done some TV stuff. I've done Ancient Aliens, and I get a lot of flack for it, which I completely understand because it's a show that will sometimes, and I have been critical about this. I don't care if I'm on the show. Like, I have my own opinions on it too. And there are times where I feel that a show like that or others like that with Ancient Astronaut Theory will strip away the ingenuity of cultures back then.
Yes.
Like they could do this. How, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
But
everything starts with an idea, right?
Exactly.
Like they have the idea and then they figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And like you said, it could have taken them 100 years to build those statues that Jennifer talked about. Who knows?
Yeah.
Göbekli Tepe, I believe, was what she was talking about.
Yes, that's right.
And this wasn't just her doing some stuffy academic lecture. Like, she went to Peru. She went to these places and actually documented everything.
Is it Robert Schock? I think
that sounds right.
Yeah. Some name. I'm sorry for not remembering the name perfectly. But yeah, he was there and she went and met him there and worked with him.
Yeah. Talk about like boots on the ground. Yeah. I really appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. So who do we have after Jennifer? And I should know because I was introducing everyone.
Oh, it was Bryce. Man of
That's
the
right.
hour.
Uh-oh. Yeah, don't forget Bryce. Yeah.
Do not forget Bryce. He will let you know. Yeah. Bryce Zabel.
Yeah.
Gave a wonderful talk that kind of, it's a Shag Harbour Expo, but really it's about ufology in general.
Well, I think this is really great what Bryce did. So Bryce watched when I did the opening talk or whatever, it was very kind of brief because I thought we were behind on time. But I asked for a show of hands who was there at their very first conference, and a ton of people put up their hands.
Yeah, that was so cool.
He went upstairs and he redid his whole speak to, kind of work with those people and say, hey, I'm going to go through a brief history of UFOs. This is your first conference. So I thought I thought that was really smart. And
that's the sort of person who you can tell has been in these writers' rooms in Los Angeles and Hollywood and had to like think on the fly how to adapt a script according to like notes he was given by these execs in their suits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You could tell he's used to thinking on his feet. And you're so right. I respected that. He's like, you know what? Not everyone knows who J. Allen Hynek is, or
Kenneth
what
Arnold.
what the Rendlesham Forest incident is.
Yeah.
We kind of take it for granted in this field of like everyone, it's a big community, but it's small too in the grand scheme of things. So a lot of these people around Yarmouth, around Shag Harbour, they aren't UFO people.
Right.
They just see that
They
there's
know
a
the
UFO
one
presence.
incident,
Yeah.
and that's it. And so I have to say something. I think this is really interesting, and I hope it's okay that I say this, Bryce. But I was in the hallway speaking with Bryce and my girlfriend Donna and Jackie Zabel, his wife, and so it kind of came up that Jackie's a skeptic. I said that's good. It's good to have a skeptic, especially in the relationship. And she said, well, Bryce is the smartest person I've ever known, and he believes something's going on. So she said, so I got to believe part of it.
That's I love that. I love that. I love the fact that if anyone can have a supportive, significant other in the UFO field, you're doing pretty good, because it's not easy. It's not. I will put it this way. Maybe now it's a little better, but back in my bachelor days, I'd go on first dates, and when they'd ask what I do, I'd say, I'm a ufologist. And there was never a second date after that. But things have changed, you know. I know for many people out there, ufology has changed for those who have been in it for a really long time.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, we all saw December 2017, the New York Times article. Now, we watched before that, prior to that in October, when the Tom DeLonge and everyone did their talk, their live stream, we were saying, oh my God, this should move the needle. Nothing happened. But then the New York Times came up with that article and everything changed.
Right.
I mean, it's like I'm still a antique and fine art appraiser, and I go on calls now, and I'm not so worried about bringing up the subject. As a matter of fact, a woman said, and she was a mathematician, her and her husband, and she was a professor mathematician. She worked for the government, really very, very bright woman. She had glass sculptures that were really unique. And she said to me, it's almost like aliens made these. And that was my opening. So I said, oh, what do you think about all that? And she goes, we were watching the DC hearing the other day. And I said, guess what? I was in the audience.
There. You were there. I remember that. Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, so it's made that whole movement, that whole sea change has made me as a professional out there doing other things, not so worried about it, talking about it.
I tend to agree. And I think that's where we're at now in the world. Like, there's been so many different polls done by whatever, sociologists, news reporters, that like more than 50% of like the greater world's population believes in aliens, in alien life, stuff like that, which I'm sure 30, 40, 50 years ago, it wasn't the same.
Right. I think it's the more we find out, about, Earth-like planets. And it just seems like I know there's some false information out there recently that James Webb was able to see, techno signatures. And that's all false that's out there if you see anything about that. But eventually I think that will happen, in that, one of the questions I always ask people like astronomers or astrophysicists is, if we are being visited, this is just something, I know we're way off topic here.
Oh God, no.
If we're being visited and life is so abundant, then why us, And, but they'll say, well, we're probably unique in a way, we're not part of a binary solar system. That is different. And always makes me wonder how different developing would be on those type of planets with different types of gravitational pulls and things like that.
Right.
Seems like that would always affect, but anyway, it's fascinating for us to think, though, after all we've learned that we're alone, it would be pretty scary if we were. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. You know, what's that old saying? Was
Arthur
it
C.
Sagan?
Clarke.
Oh, Clarke.
Arthur
yeah.
C. Clarke said, let's see, either we're totally alone in the universe or we're not. Either one is scary or something like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know verbatim, but
yeah, we get the gists of that. Yeah. It really, the ramifications either way.
Yeah.
Are equally as terrifying.
Yeah, I think that's
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
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 I love that. I love that. So yeah, Bryce, I guess, yeah, he kind of got us all up to speed. Like where ufology kind of started, the modern UFO era, literally up to, you know, these recent revelations of people like David Grush and the crash retrieval programs. We have a House UAP hearing happening in November, I think, was recently announced.
Well, I didn't really. I got to look into that.
Yeah, there's
go to that one too.
You should. House UAP hearing. The Senate is going to do one as well at some point. So we'll see what happens with that. But before we move to our last speaker, to I guess sort of bookend this with Shag Harbour, what do you make of everything going on now? You've interviewed, you know, people like Elizondo and other former intelligence people, military people. This new, I guess, Grush era we're living in of whistleblowers, like people who have claimed to have worked on these programs of retrieving what could be in Shag Harbour and working on it. So what do you make of all this stuff?
Well, I'm trying not to be too optimistic. You know, I feel as though, and, you know, I haven't looked, compared to some of these researchers, I haven't looked into this topic. I only started really looking into it 2010, somewhere around there. You know, my sighting was 2007. You know, but I feel as though it feels like we're moving ahead, but I've had those false feelings before, so I'm trying not to be too optimistic. I don't know. Here's my thought on the whole situation in general. I think that our government knows a lot more than we do about what's going on. Maybe other governments do as well. But I don't think they know everything. And I think because they don't know everything, they're going to keep it tight. Because if they don't know everything, then they can't tell us that they can protect us totally.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my general feeling. So I think that, and it's just my opinion, it doesn't mean that it's factual in any type of way, but I just feel as though that it's going to be really, really tough to get the government, our government in the United States, to actually come clean with as much as they know. Yeah. Because they can't give the entire picture.
Exactly.
Maybe they have the entire picture, but I don't really know.
I think I'm on the same page as you, because everyone always asks, you know, people like us who have interviewed these intel people about what they know or what they are legally allowed to say to the public, that it's not even so much, I forget who told me this, but it always stuck with me. It's not so much what the US or other governments know about the UFO topic that is the cover-up. It's actually what they don't know that is the cover-up. That they don't know. That makes
total sense. Yeah.
What these things are, where they come from, what they are potentially here to do. And that's almost scarier.
It is,
you know,
in a way. You know, it's like the people that I have this, I don't know if this must happen to you as well. So you really believe in UFOs? And it's like, no. Wait a minute, let's back that up.
Yeah.
UFOs are here. There's so many witnesses. What I don't know is what they are, or where they're from, or what they want. You know, those are the three questions. But there's no question, there's nothing to believe in. It's like factual that people are seeing things in so many ways. But what they are is the question those people should be asking. But that's just someone like on the outside when they first hear that you're, you know, into the topic.
Yeah.
And, you know, I understand the question, but it's not about belief. It's the belief is, you know, that it's evident that we are being visited by something.
Yeah.
But what that is, I'm never going to say for sure that it's, you know, extraterrestrial. I don't know. Interdimensional, extraterrestrial, time travel. You can keep going on and on. I think the interdimensional thing answers a lot of things, but, you know, when people say they blink in and out and, you know, all these different things, Even the Ariel School when Francis Chumunga, I believe, I hope I'm not mispronouncing his last name, something like that. Sorry, Francis. When he talks about this being going toward the pool, and he says it's like blinking out and blinking in ahead of itself. So that almost sounds interdimensional.
Oh, that's I'd never heard that before. So it was almost like ahead of itself already.
It sees it blinking out, and it never sees the feet touch the ground either.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, and it's like heading toward the pool. He's one of the witnesses.
Okay.
That
was the Ariel School, the Zimbabwe one? Okay.
1995.
Right. Oh, of which you've interviewed several of the
including him. And
okay.
Yeah. That's
fascinating.
To me, that's that's the go-to case. I mean,
absolutely.
Really, it's hard to dispute that.
Yep.
With John Mack going there a few weeks after, and a child psychologist, Harvard trained and Harvard professor of child psychologist, knows how to talk to children, without leading them, and just making them feel comfortable, on their same level and stuff like that. And you look at those interviews, and how could you dispute any of that? Right. What I mean?
Well, I remember back when I started giving my talk, you had given me permission to use a clip from one of your interviews with, I believe it was Selma
Siddiq.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
very articulate.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And the clip, and I highly suggest people go back and look at the podcast UFO archives for his interviews with Selma. The clip that really resonated with me, and I played it early on when I would give my talks, is she's talking about where her life went after this event and how she integrated the experience into her life in a positive way. Yeah. Which even some of the Zimbabwe kids did not.
I know.
So that's interesting.
And it's, torturous to a few of them.
Yeah.
And I understand, a lot of them were told, this is a demonic thing, that type of thing. And they're, they just didn't know where to put it in their life. Mm-hmm. But so I know we went way off the topic. The Shag Harbour incident.
We
were talking about that. Yeah, right here. But I don't know if you want to get back into that. But Chris Stiles was the next speaker.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's move to Chris.
You were talking earlier. You said, he's like the go-to. Who I'm trying to remember the older gentleman that's kind of retired from doing it.
Don Ledger.
That's it, Don Ledger. Yeah. He's a great guy.
Yes.
Yep, great guy.
Never interviewed him, but I love his work.
I did early on. But he is Chris Stiles is he wrote a book about that kind of separates the Shelburne incident from Shag Harbour. And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I know the incidents supposedly were conflated, where something happened in Shag Harbour, and then the same night, if not the next morning, the object or whatever it was that crashed moved to Shelburne.
Well, that's how we always thought about it.
Right.
Yes.
That was kind of the
two separate events. Yeah.
And not only two separate events, but like you mentioned, Chris said, was it 6 years prior or something like that?
Yeah, it was 1960.
Wow.
That was a military exercise between Canada and the U.S. And basically it was 13 ships in Shelburne Bay, and they were doing rescue exercises. And these divers went down, and now it was only in 7 fathoms of water, 47 feet, which is not very deep if you're diving.
Yeah.
They see 2 disc-shaped crafts on the ground and beings working on one of them. Now, the divers were very, very reluctant. Now, he went through all of this FOIA requests and everything to get these documents. And there's something really interesting about this I'm going to tell in just a second. But when I was hearing him talk about it, I raised my hand and I said, what did the divers say the beings look like? And he said they didn't really, the one he interviewed didn't really want to talk about it that much. And I said, were they wearing any breathing apparatuses? And he said, no, which is a whole nother thing.
So
and they looked similar to like grays as far as the description, but he said the diver wanted to keep moving on from that topic. He was very uncomfortable talking about it.
Oh, interesting.
So Chris is doggedly going to be looking for a film, because he said there was a lot of filming of those creatures. And I mean, can you imagine if they could ever find something like that?
Smoking gun. I mean, I want to say that, but let's be honest. Even with the clearest, crystal clear video of a literal alien underwater,
Yeah.
somebody will come out and say fake.
Well, of course they will. But I mean, really today, I mean, you'd have to see that it was on the original film and you'd have to
Good point.
document all
Yeah.
that. But today we can't believe anything.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are people that are going to be able to tell AI generated videos and pictures, but we have to be so, I mean, you can't believe anything politically. You can't believe anything in the UFO world, you know, because of all the technology where it's gone. It's going to be more difficult to ever believe. But one of the most interesting things I think that Chris uncovered in that whole thing is that the United States went to DEFCON 1, which is
oh, of course.
very, someone's coming in, getting their bicycle. We are in the boardroom, which is, anyway, that's the only time, as far as I know, that we've gone to DEFCON 1
Yeah.
outside of a war.
Which is insane to think that it happened and that it could be possibly connected to one of the most famous UFO crashes in history. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
So, yeah.
There was one other thing I think about Shelburne I wanted to ask you about. Let me see if I can remember. Sorry, we got distracted there.
Yeah.
Let me go up in the chat quick. And I want to ask you a personal question too before we close things out. If that's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Hello to everyone in the chat. Sorry we haven't
everyone.
been checking the chat so much. We were very enthralled by this conversation. Hello. Don't worry about it. No, not at all. What was it about Shelburne that I wanted to ask? Oh, I was watching last night an interview you were doing with, or it might have been the night before. Was it Danny that is working with
Yes,
you?
Danny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he had mentioned, and I didn't know this, going back to the Shag Harbour event, 67, that there were UFO sightings the night prior?
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. I came here, the first time I came here was the 50th anniversary, and that was in 2017. So I was here, and they had it at the center, you know, over toward where the UFO, you know, it all happened, which was really great. Now, there was a pilot that was speaking at that time, and I can't remember if it was the one that the Pan Am flight or the other flight. So they saw it the night before. They saw something the night before.
Okay.
And they reported it and talked about it. So, and they also saw it the same night.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that's the pilot that was speaking at that event, but you know, that's going back a ways. But yeah, I mean, so things were happening before that and since, you know, there's a lot of activity here, and it makes you wonder, right?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. So last night, again, mixing these worlds together, we were investigating the Barrington wool mill, an old wool mill in Barrington. They also have a not a working lighthouse, but it's a lighthouse that's been converted into a lighthouse museum. So it gets very meta. Yeah. And they have a war museum over there. It's a really cool little complex.
Oh,
if you ever
check
get
it out.
yeah. Everything you can think of, old like military memorabilia, and so cool. All this being said, I was talking to the archivist there and just happened to tell her, you know, I'm doing ghost hunting, but I'm more well known as a UFO researcher. And she's like, oh, just like everyone, I've got a story to tell you.
Yeah.
And she went on to tell me that there was a incident in the 1840s of the same exact light phenomena in It was in Barrington and moved to I think it was Cape Sable Island, where these yellow lights, as Lori saw during Shag Harbour back in 1840, were like over the water.
Amazing.
And I was stunned. I'm like, no, I don't think anyone's ever heard of this. And it's because it's not on the internet. It's in an old book of a local, historian in Barrington.
Wow. I'd love to see that.
I took some pictures.
You did? Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Of the pages of the book. It's one of those you'd love it, old books that has that smell.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
But again, that's amazing. And then she also told me, oh yeah, my father-in-law was one of the guys that was sent out on the boat to try to retrieve the Shag Harbour.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I
everyone
love being
here,
in a place that's connected like that.
they all have connections somehow.
And a
to the
lot of
Shag
people,
Harbour.
like we were talking about earlier, a lot of people, this is all they know. This is all they really care about. And they're not really looking any deeper.
Mhm.
And I get that. You know, it's like a local legend or whatever. But and I think that was really great that Bryce did what he did to, you know, show everybody that was here for the first time that probably had that way of thinking.
Mhm.
I'm only here because I heard of, you know, the Shag Harbour. Want to know more about it.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing.
And they definitely got it with
Yeah.
this one. We really ran the gamut, I think,
Yeah.
with all the different topics of the speakers and whatnot. We should mention too, before I forget, there were films shown here.
Oh yeah.
We had that really good.
Darcy Weir was here.
Darcy Weir
what a
was
great guy he is. He's
Yeah.
a lot of fun.
My first time meeting him. He just came out, guys, with a documentary on USOs. So
Transmedium or whatever. I think that's the name of it.
Yeah. I think it kind of centers around the Aguadilla
Yes.
video, maybe,
Yeah.
if I'm correct.
Yeah.
Go Google, throw Darcy Weir into your Google machine and find his films. They're
Yeah, the
wonderful.
Aguadilla, I think, is his second one.
Yes.
Yeah, the second one, he focuses more on that. He goes right to Puerto Rico.
Yep.
And yeah.
Again.
But he has two films out there.
Yep.
And both of them are basically on USOs, along with Andy Marseille, I believe his last name is. But yeah, really great.
Yeah, that was
Great
cool.
films.
I know they also did an experiencer session here.
Yes.
Early in
Started
the
at
morning.
7:32 early for a lot of people.
I know. I could not talk about a UFO sighting or an abduction experience, let alone.
No, it
At
has to
7 in
be
the morning.
within an act of abduction for me to talk about it.
I know
Yeah.
we both barely
not.
made it down here for a 10
10
o'clock
a.m.
live
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah.
But no, this has been amazing. But guys, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat now. Now is your chance. If you want to ask Martin anything. But in the meantime, if it's okay, Martin, to sort of close things out, you mentioned you had a UFO sighting.
I
Is
did.
that something you're willing to
Oh,
share?
yeah, sure. But I have to say, sounds kind of funny. It was boring. Compared to some of the people I've heard, you know, I got to tell you, 1985 or so, and these both happened in a hot tub. So,
Nice.
but
Okay.
anyway, people always say, "Oh, were you drinking?" Well, no, I wasn't in either time that I can remember. The first one, maybe, but I can't remember. 1985, I saw the most, and I've talked to Mark D'Antonio and other people about this. I saw the most amazing fireball that you could ever imagine. It just came right over, and I didn't hear any sound either. But when I described, this was more dramatic to me than my UFO sighting.
Really?
This thing looked like a perfectly shaped round ball. It was rotating. I could see it rotating. I could see it very clearly going over my head, over the hot tub, heading toward, I lived 3 miles from the Atlantic Ocean at the time. I was heading toward the ocean. I could see it rotating. I could see orange cracks and sparks flying off of it.
Wow. That was
And it was-
close.
And I saw it at enough time where I was with my wife at the time, and I said, "Look." And she's going, "What?" And I go, "Look." And I said, by the third time, she finally turned and, you know, caught it just going out of sight. Now that was really dramatic. And I talked to Jordan Bonaparte, who's up here, and he heard me talk about this. He's up here in Nova Scotia in Halifax. And he said he thinks his grandparents saw the same thing.
Really?
Yeah, he said it was around 1985.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he kind of described the same thing. Okay, my sighting, I was in Carmel Valley, California, and I did a lot of work in the appraisal field, actually, I did Merv Griffin's estate. Some people may know who he was, talk show host from years ago, and he had a place in Carmel Valley. Beautiful area, it's right near Monterey. So I was at a ranch, and I was at a guest house, and I was using the hot tub, and I never like to use the bubbles or anything like that. I like just sitting in the hot water and relaxing. And it was dusk, and something caught my eye, and so I just look up, and I guess you'd say it was like the size of a quarter at arm's length or so. Just came over me, and it was a perfectly shaped disc, and it had a blue glow around it.
Whoa.
And it just at a real steady pace, not fast at all. And the thing that I thought was really crazy about it is I'm hearing nothing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that a lot of people were going to say that until I started looking in. And I'm thinking, how could it be moving? And then I saw it stop, and it stayed steady in one spot. I didn't see it move a fraction. It's almost like it was a drawing.
Oh,
it didn't,
gosh, yeah.
it just so exact. And then it went in an exact angle toward Monterey. And I know there was a Navy school in Monterey in that area. I jumped out of the hot tub again, as we talked about earlier. I didn't realize that there was any such thing as reporting online. So what am I going to do? I went into the guest house. There was a landline, and I called 911 and apologized. And I said, I'm really sorry. It's not really an emergency, but I wondered if people are talking about this craft heading toward Monterey. And she goes, craft, what craft? She was extremely sarcastic to me.
Yeah.
And she put me on hold, and I waited on hold for, it seemed like 15 minutes. I don't really know how long. And I finally hung up, and that was it. So the next weekend I worked at an auction gallery in Oakland, California, a big auction house with a lot of people. And I had a mentor who's just recently, she's an auctioneer now, and she just sold the dinosaur in New York for $44.6 million.
Whoa.
As their auctioneer for Sotheby's. She's doing very well. So I was mentoring her, and I was teaching her silver and things like that.
Okay.
So I said, I got to tell you what I saw this weekend. And I told the whole thing. I said, this is crazy. Please don't tell anyone. Not even 15 minutes later, people are going, oh, little green men, huh? Started teasing me. So I kept it to myself, and I didn't want to talk to anyone about it. And then I was doing podcasts, an antique podcast. Then I did a comedy podcast for a while. Then Paul Gilmartin, that's where I met him. You remember him from California?
Yep.
So I was on someone else's podcast, and they said, well, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you? And I basically told the story. And so the guy, Ed Krasnick is his name, from Southern California. He did this like word, the data on, keywords. And he says, the keyword UFO is really, really something. It's really, there was a lot of hits on the word, UFO. I go, really? Well, I'm doing an antique podcast. I'm doing a comedy podcast. Maybe I'll do a podcast on UFOs. So I started really diving deep into it. This is around 2010. I started diving really deep into it in November 2011. I was contacting everyone. Anyone in the field. And I'd say, hey, I'm looking to do my first podcast. Stan Friedman. I never heard back from, nothing against, I loved Stan Friedman, but I didn't hear back from anyone. All of a sudden, Stephen Bassett said, okay, I'll be on. So he was my very first podcast. And,
Ooh, that's going out of the gate with Steve Bassett.
Yeah. So that's how it all started. And, I love this topic.
So would you say that your sighting was kind of the impetus to start the UFO podcast, or was it simply hearing like UFOs were kind of a hot topic at the time?
It was both. I thought, well, this would be, I still have my antique podcast. It's called Antique Auction Forum. But I just thought this would be really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I've always thought it's been, I still feel like I feel like if we knew everything, I'd probably still do the show.
Yeah. Well, people always ask me, they're like, if we ever found out, the truth behind all of this, no matter what that truth might be, no matter if we like that truth or not, do you think you'd still do this? Like, would there be a point? I'm like, well, yeah, because like you mentioned earlier,
we still want more information.
Yeah.
For one thing.
Like, we've gotten to that point now where like the United States government, which we hold to such high standards throughout the world, being like the one to disclose the truth about UFOs. They basically have. They've admitted UFOs are real. Yeah. But like you mentioned earlier, a million questions come after that. And I think in a quote unquote post-disclosure world, you and I would be like, okay, it's there. The base level is now, yes, UFOs exist, which it wasn't for a really long time. Right. But where do we go from there? So I feel like your work, my work has really just begun, even though a lot of people look at it like you guys are almost to the finish line, or
Yeah.
I don't think we're anywhere near it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I got to say that I don't want to say the negative side. I never say a negative side. I like to see that, people are really taking this topic serious. But what has happened is there's so many people now talking about UFOs.
Yeah.
It's like, so, where do you go? Where do you go to get your good information? And, it's hard. And people ask me, hey, should I look on YouTube for, UFO videos? And I say, I don't know. I'm not going to name any names, but, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I've had people contact me that were in the government at one time that were really looking seriously into this topic and asked me my opinion of videos.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of them were CGI.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to, as we move forward and the new technologies, to be able to figure out what is real. So no, I don't think YouTube is all that great of an idea to go if you're actually looking for footage. But that being said, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of really interesting things that people do post on their own.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I was out at the harbor, literally down the street. You guys can't see it, obviously. A couple nights ago, or excuse me, it was daytime, and I snapped a photo of some boats. And then in retrospect, I looked at the photo. I'm like, what is that up in the corner?
Yeah.
So I zoom in, and I'm going to get some flack for this. I already am on Twitter. It looked to me almost like a beam ship, like a Billy Meyer beam ship. And I'm like, what is this? And it almost looked like the sun was glimmering off of it, like it was metallic. And I got so excited, and I didn't have my analytical hat on, nothing. I was just like, I posted it on Twitter. I'm like, I just saw this, guys. What do you think this could be? I'm not pretending it's alien. I'm not pretending it's a prosaic thing. I don't
It's a good
know.
way to put it. Yeah.
I want to crowdsource this. And almost immediately, people are like, it's a seagull. And the more I looked at it, I'm like, there's the beak.
Yep.
There's the shadow under the wing.
Yep.
Mick West would be very happy right now. And he did retweet it. It said, sometimes, guys, it's just a seagull.
Oh,
so
my God.
I am the butt of the joke right now.
That's okay. You did the right thing. You didn't say it was a UFO. You say, what do you think this is? And I got to tell you, it's so funny. I was driving across the United States going to Phoenix back in 2015 or something like that to go to the UFO Congress out there. And Mark D'Antonio was there. And I've been good friends for a long time. So I was taking these pictures of the desert as I'm going along. And one of them had like this perfectly shaped disc in it. And I go, holy mackerel. And I showed it to Mark. I said, what do you think this is? And he goes, I think you might have something on the glass in your car. I went out to the glass and there was a little tiny piece of straw on the glass. And so, yeah, I mean, I would never, yeah. And I had, it's like you're going to laugh at this. I spent the winters in South Carolina. And the last winter I was out there, I was in the hot tub again. But again, not drinking.
Think for the hot tubs.
Yeah, not drinking. Yes, I do. Not drinking. And I saw something, and I filmed part of it, a little bit of it, tried to, but it was too late. But I'm really, really reluctant to say I saw a UFO. Mm-hmm. But you did the right thing, and that's probably what I would do too, is crowdsource and say, what do you think this is? But what I got was at the tail end, it wasn't enough to really look. Mm-hmm. But it was, I don't even want to describe it too much, but it was a light that jagged and came back. And, and I had my phone with me. I was listening to something and got it just the tail end. It doesn't look like anything.
Yeah.
But I'm really reluctant as someone, we have to watch our credibility. And I'm really reluctant as a podcaster and someone that's, trying to play everything straight to say that I had a UFO sighting
Yeah.
for sure. I really don't know.
It's difficult, yeah, because you do want to remain objective. I mean, I even had Chase Klutsky, MUFON investigator, in my talk,
Yeah.
who became a part of her own investigation
That's such a great story.
and
I
saw
love
the
that one.
weird stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
she saw
That
grays, beings.
And you know, one thing
Ugh.
she didn't say in your presentation that she said to me, she said the neck and the legs were so thin she couldn't understand how it could be like standing.
Right, like how its
Yeah.
head could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want, guys, you can read about that case in my first book. But yeah, I think let's go to the chat if you don't mind, Martin.
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah.
know you've
Have
got to
we,
get going soon.
No, I'm all set.
Okay, we got some
There's a-
start stuff here.
Question right there in
Okay.
caps. I don't know.
Thrilling. Let me put these up here. It was so thrilling to have you both at the UFO Expo. See you next year from Shelley. That's very sweet.
Awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Terrence says, love you, Martin and Ryan. So great seeing two people at the top of their game talking about this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Terrence has a question. For Martin and Ryan, what is your favorite UFO case so far? And what do you each hope for the best for the rest of 2024? Thanks both. Great work. Much love. Do you have a favorite case?
Well, I would have to say that, you know, I talked about it earlier. I really think the Ariel School is probably my favorite one.
That's a great
Yeah.
choice. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to, you know, they're all our babies. You know, it's hard to pick one. But,
Yeah.
but still, that one to me is such an amazing one. There's so many that are really amazing. It's really a hard decision, but I would have to say that's edging out at, you know, pretty much at the top.
I'd say that's a good choice. For me, and I've talked about it on the show many times, so I won't go into the case itself, guys, but the Tehran UFO incident of 76.
Yeah.
Again, I hope I'm getting the year right. I always mix
I believe you're 100% right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where Iranian fighter jets, actually United States fighter jets that were leased to Iran at the time, that actually plays into this incident later, chased a UFO, tried to fire at it, and all of their instruments failed. There's so much documentation about it. 76. Thank you. I love that case. Parviz Jafari, the general at the time, was the one to go up and intercept the UFO. And to his dying day, literally, he testified and would testify under oath in the United States that what he saw was not from here. And what I found fascinating was he brings up a good point that the military is so quick to shoot first, ask questions later.
I know, it's terrible.
And he said, my biggest regret was that I couldn't communicate and say, what are you? Who are you? Why are you here? And instead, his orders were to fire on it first. So that gives me chills.
Yeah, I mean, you think of it, we're such a warring society and tribal and all that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, why would they reveal themselves? You know, it seems like the sci-fi that you see, like if someone's landing, except for the movie Contact, the latest one. Arrival.
Yeah.
Except for that, for the most part, it always shows that, you know, we're trying to blast them.
Right.
You know, I mean, that's kind of what we do. And so if they're paying attention, you know, maybe that's why we don't have them fully revealed.
Exactly.
Be.
Leslie Kane always says, like, the threat isn't these UFOs themselves particularly, it's our reaction or response to them that can be the biggest threat.
Yeah.
So I always try to keep that in mind. Let's see here. Thank you, MJ, for being here. Deborah asks, question, how do you think disclosure would impact society existentially, religiously, and globally? Ooh, the old hypothetical disclosure question. Yeah. Bryce wrote a book all about that, after disclosure.
After disclosure,
Yeah. What do you think? How would the world change?
I think for the most part, this is, you know, just my theory on that, is that I don't think it's going to change a whole lot like it would have years before. I think we're kind of like getting used to it, our toes in the water. And I feel as though that we're kind of getting used to it a little more. I don't think it's going to affect, I mean, you look at the Catholic, you know, the Pope has said that, you know, he would baptize them or something like that, as if they want to be. But, you know, I think that religions aren't going to fall. Although, depending on what type of, situation or what type of beliefs they have, how strong those beliefs are. But I think I think there will be an adjustment. I don't know if it will be, cataclysmic in any type of way. I don't believe it will be, because, we have to move on every day, and people have to pay their mortgage and do the work and make their dinner and stuff like that. I hope what's not going to happen is if it's totally revealed, as if it's, ephemeral and forgotten about the next day.
Yeah.
I
struggle every day with, would it be paradigm shifting? Of course it will be, especially on each individual. But I think overall, globally, you're right. Like, we're living in a time where there's wars all over the world, climate change, you name it. There's things happening. We've got these horrible things happening in North Carolina, in Florida, and everything.
And by the way, Micah Hanks is okay. We know that.
Yes, we have received word. Micah is doing good. He is just without internet and electricity, but he is safe. So yeah, anyone who was asking, I know people are texting me, has anyone heard from Micah? He's good. He's good, guys. Yeah. But yeah, I would have to agree with you. I think we are adaptable creatures. We always have been.
Yeah.
So
so many ways.
Yeah. If that were to happen, yeah, you're right. The next day, okay, well, I still have to go to work. Yeah. I still have to eat. I still have to pay the bills.
Now I have to say this, if we found that out and then we found out they were a threat, that would be a whole different situation, I believe. Yeah. How would we prepare for that?
Right.
I don't think they're, I may be totally wrong in this, but I don't feel like they're a threat, because I think we would know that by now.
They have had so many opportunities.
Sure.
If these cases we've heard are true, of them shutting off nuclear installations and weapons, and but then you look at the other side of they're also abducting people. So it's where are we dealing with different intelligences or just different motivations by one race of aliens? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? But it's all very fascinating. But yeah, I agree with you. I think things would change, but life would go on. And we would have to learn how to integrate this new thing into our world in every way. So.
And I've said this, I believe I said this when I was emceeing the other day, is I watched something on YouTube, and I believe that it was filmed in 1955. 1955, that's 5-5. Where this guy with the fedora is saying, I just want to know what these things are before I die.
Yeah.
And that was back then.
Here we are. Yeah.
Here we are, it's almost 70 years later.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Still wondering.
It was, and I think Bryce brought up, was it Hynek? Went to his deathbed and his last words were something like, still they won't tell me the truth about this.
Yeah.
And then he died. Oh man.
Yeah.
Breaks my heart.
Yeah.
On a lighter note. Surf Psych, welcome. How similar is Martin's disc sighting to the Costa Rica 1971 Lake Cote UFO photo? Interesting. Ooh. Are you familiar with that photo?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry, but forgive me if you want to move on to another question, and I'll I want to see what it is.
1971 Costa Rica Lake Cote. COT.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, Surf Psych.
Because I love hearing about things I've never heard about.
Yeah. Give that a look. I'll move to this question, Martin. Shane Ryan is here. Martin and Ryan.
Oh, Shane. Hi, Shane, from Down Under.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Hello, Shane. Did you know a Miami-based filmmaker is endeavoring to make a documentary series about the 1967 Crestview Elementary School UFO incident in Opelika, Florida? That's interesting. I just did a school children episode of the podcast where I talked about cases from all over the place. Is that it?
I don't know. I'm going to make sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway.
Yeah. In this case, this one in Opelika showed up, which is really interesting. There seem to be a lot of documentaries coming out.
Yeah.
We've got James Fox has a new one.
I know this one. This is the one on the map.
Let's go ahead if
I don't know if we can do that. That's the one that's on the map, like a Google
Yeah.
But yes, but there's supposedly I was taken by. I'm trying to think. I remember about this, but I can't remember the history. It was photographed in 1971, and but anyway, yeah, fascinating picture,
Yeah.
and I would say very much like that. But you have to look at this is looking down onto this thing, and I was looking up under,
Right.
and all I can say was I can't say anything distinguishing at all about it other than being this perfectly shaped disc and with a blue glow, and it's like a cool blue glow around it. You know, I mean, it was like a fuzziness. You know,
Interesting.
and
I
it
wonder what that
sort of
was.
lit up. But this was dusk, you know, so it wasn't. I can't tell if it was bright or whatever.
Huh.
But
yeah, like a force field or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
The
I've only
theories
heard
are
of one
loose.
other person talk about something similar.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. Thank you, Shane. Thank you for that. We'll keep a
Yeah.
lookout for the documentary. Yeah, we should mention they just dropped the trailer for James Fox's new documentary.
Oh yes,
The
that's right.
program. So
Yep.
everyone go check that out.
Yep.
I think there's a new Bob Lazar documentary coming
Oh,
out
no.
here.
Oh
No.
I mean,
Whole can of worms. We won't get in
Yeah.
here. But yeah, it is what it is. Whatever happened to Obama's Betty and Barney Hill abduction doc? I think that's still coming out. Did you know that Obama was producing? And I think it's going to be a Netflix
I
documentary.
had no idea.
Yeah, this was
Wow.
announced. It was very under the rug, actually, that Obama and his wife were going to be co-producing a documentary series, or I don't know if it's a fictional series based on. I don't know, but yeah, they were for some reason fascinated by that case.
Now I actually live in that town,
Right.
Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I lived there till I was age 3, then moved 5 miles away. But when I was growing up there, the story I guess came out in '66, I believe.
Mhm.
It happened in '61 or 2, I can't remember. But never heard a thing.
Nothing.
Never heard a thing about
Wow,
it. Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just yet another fascinating case, and I know we should also say rest in peace to James Earl Jones, who played
Yes.
Barney Hill
That's
in
right.
that wonderful movie, The UFO Abduction. I believe it was called The UFO Incident.
I actually did see that.
Yeah.
And I at the time, and I saw it when it came out on TV, I believe.
Oh wow.
And I don't know why I didn't put Portsmouth together with then I was living right there. But I was like, but I did watch that, and I didn't really have much of an interest to watch things like that. But I remember watching it
Yeah.
and thinking, wow, that's.
Whole jam.
But no, I'm thinking more or less sci-fi. I didn't think it was a real case or something. But
Yeah.
I can't really recall.
Well, in another case, like Shag Harbour, that I'm now learning, had UFO sightings prior to the Betty and Barney Hill incident in Portsmouth. There were things caught on radar. Other witnesses saw things. So I tend to believe them that something happened.
Yeah.
Something definitely happened in Portsmouth.
Now, when I was a kid, I lived across the river from Pease Air Force Base. That's where they did detect things. And I lived across the river and up on a hill so I could see the landing strip there. And I saw some weird things, but I think they were weather balloons and things like that. My sister and I were
the
sitting there
old
watching
weather balloon.
the real weather balloons.
It's always,
Yeah.
we can't escape it. I feel like today's seagull was yesterday's weather balloon for sure.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to start to close things out because Martin does have other plans today, and I also have to go ghost hunt.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll get to these last 2 questions here. I want to thank all of you for participating.
Yeah. Thank
watching.
you, everyone.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Ray says, do you think our treatment of aliens from neighboring countries informs how we would treat aliens from another planet? Good.
Well,
heavy
I
question.
think I don't. Yeah, that is a heavy question. I think we look at the what we have to do for people coming into this country and supply for them. I don't think that's the same situation. If an alien came here, they're not going to want to use our social services, so to speak. So no, I don't think they would be treated the same in any type of way. I'm hoping that we'd be welcoming.
Yeah.
I mean, the alternative wouldn't be good.
If they come in peace.
If they come in peace, that's right.
Otherwise, Independence Day.
If they don't, we might as well, just
I know.
find the bunker and hide.
Yeah, it is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. I would have to agree with you.
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference between the two. But then you look at like H.G. Wells wrote War of the Worlds kind of to compare it to colonialization at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have these interesting sociological questions that could be asked of others,
Yes.
whether it's immigrants coming to another country or if it's aliens coming to another planet. But I get where you're coming from. Like, I think there is a responsibility on this planet for all humans to look out for all humans, no matter what. It should be an unspoken rule of just our mere existence and being part of humanity. But yeah, it would really depend on the intention of whatever non-human intelligence, I guess we're calling it now.
Yeah.
That's the new buzz term.
That's right.
What their intentions would be.
Yeah.
So, good question.
Very good point. Yeah.
Here we go. Terrence, we're going to end with this question, guys. For Ryan and Martin, what do you think the phenomenon is? We kind of touched on that earlier, but why are they here? So yeah, interdimensional, us from the future. Where do you're kind of column A, column B, column
Well, yeah, and I like the term Jacques Vallée has said, maybe it's a number of things. And maybe it's something that we wouldn't understand. And that seems almost incomprehensible that we wouldn't understand something. But maybe that's what it is. And then, when you hear Lou Elizondo, say it's like maybe it's something that's always been here, and that's fascinating in itself. So, I would have to say it's all in the gray basket. I really don't know. I never pretend that I do know. And I just, alien to us. That's the best way I can put it. Alien to us.
I could not put it better. I mean, I change my mind every day on what it could be. And I do think it is different sources, different intelligences, different phenomena. I'm even on this weird journey right now of trying to connect the paranormal to UFOs, to cryptozoology. And even on my ghost show, Martin, like if we have paranormal activity going on in the house, I run outside and start looking up in the sky to see if UFOs are happening at the same time.
Yeah, Paul Eno, who we lost fairly recently, within the last year, his idea was that everything was interdimensional. It all, like Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, every single thing he thought was interdimensional, and they were all connected. I thought it was an interesting theory.
It is. Why have we never, allegedly found a body of a Bigfoot, or why we can't capture ghosts at a constant rate, or UFOs and creatures at the bottom of Shag Harbour, or Shelburne, I should say.
And I had an experience that I can't explain, and maybe some people would call it poltergeist, but I still don't know what it was. Yeah. And, I witnessed it firsthand.
Yep.
And I would bet my son's life that it really happened. That's how, it did happen to me. And it wasn't, now people are going to say, what was it? I think that's.
Yeah, of course.
But it was, basically, I'll just say real quickly, if you'd like.
Please, yeah.
So I was working in a house in the auction business, and I was cleaning it out, and I was putting things, in the winter was slow. I said, hey, look, I'll take everything out of here so you can sell the house. So I'm taking things out of a closet upstairs. All the windows were down. There was a carpet in, and I had to force the closet door open to get over the carpet because they never trimmed the bottom of the door when they put the carpet in, basically. Okay. So I'm taking things out of the closet. The door's wide open. I had slid a broom down the stairway, and all of a sudden the closet door in the bedroom slammed. Oof. So I go back in and I try the door and see how hard it is to open and how hard it is to close. I look at the closed windows and I say, I'm getting out of here. And just then, there was no wind that day. I was there in the house alone. The front door slammed. I went downstairs, and the broom that I slid down 15 minutes earlier was leaning against the door.
Oh,
Nobody was there.
No.
And there was one other thing that happened. And so that really happened.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. I swore I'd never talk about it, but I don't care at this point in my life because it's something that happened.
Yeah.
And I know it happened. I watched it, and I don't know what it was.
That's what we need, Martin. We need more of these. Whoever is part of the truth embargo, as Bassett would call it, or the cover up, we need more of them to say, I don't care anymore. Here you go. And maybe we're slowly starting to see that. We'll see as these, whatever, UFOs in Congress or this Disclosure Act in the National Defense Bill, if all of this comes to light and we finally do get some of these people being like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sick of the lies. I'm sick of the cover up. And I want people to know.
The caveat to that, though, is the people that will get in trouble, that have these NDAs and, they'll lose their pension, they'll lose that. And that's what they have held over them. Yeah. And also if they violate anything that has to do with national security. And that's another tough thing you can get into because anything can kind of be twisted a little bit into that box of national security and, you're going to lose your pension.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. I feel like the more we know, the more classified everything is going to start to get. So it's just this constant game of like,
cat and
we're
mouse.
getting a little bit, but now we're classifying all UFO related material, as John Greenwald is saying. So it's fascinating. Awesome. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you for your questions. Again, we really do appreciate that. Appreciate that. Thanks for hanging out with us this morning. But before we go, Martin, let us know where can we find everything you're doing, what you got coming up. Yeah, give us all of that.
Okay. So next Tuesday, I have Dan Carlson, who's a pastor. He's been in touch with me for about a year. He's very fascinated by the topic. He's going to be a pretty interesting guest.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. And I did interview at the in DC at the hearing. I interviewed a priest live, and that was fascinating there. And in the background, you see Lou Elizondo walking. I didn't even know he was there. Someone spotted it. It's on
like catching
video.
A Bigfoot.
Yeah, they that's right. But anyway, so it's Podcast UFO, very easy URL to find. And I have live shows every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I usually run for an hour, sometimes longer. And I also do the Everything Else show, which is, of course, Everything Else. Every once in a while, I'll do that on a Thursday night. But that's it. And then I have a YouTube channel and, things like that. All basically the same. And you can find it in any podcast feed, out there. Mm-hmm. Things like that. But that's it. But it's been a real pleasure. I thought we had a great conversation.
Thanks, my man. That was such a pleasure. Yeah, guys. And like I said, hopefully we'll get some footage from the Shag Harbour UFO. Oh, good camera work. The UFO Expo. I'll see if I can get my hands on any of that. But go check out Shag Harbour UFO Expo on Facebook. They've been posting a bunch of pictures and stuff from it, so you can get a feel for it. And yeah, stay tuned for some news on that front about Shag Harbour and something I'm working on. I will let you know about that soon. But again, I want to thank Martin for coming on here today. I want to thank Suzanne, our wonderful moderator. She did a great job. I know we weren't really looking at the chat too much, but that's what happens. She did a great job as always. And thank you to all. I keep looking here. Yeah. I thank you to all of you for watching. This will be available in podcast form as well in the very near future. So make sure you subscribe, all that stuff, and yeah, check out Podcast UFO wherever you find Somewhere in the Skies as well. And that's going to do it, guys. Thank you again. We'll leave you with a mantra here as always. As we close things out, keep your feet on the ground, but never stop searching somewhere in the skies. Thanks again.
nothing to hide. There's nothing to hide at all.